From Vice Magazine and HBO comes this new weekly documentary series.
You guys made this.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's made from here.
Correspondents highlight political issues around the globe.
What is the Taliban's position on suicide attacks?
While showing both sides of complex conflicts.
It's Little House on the Prairie mixed with Children of the Corn.
In Vice.
Hi, I'm Leah.
I'm Salim.
And I'm Aaron, and today we're here to talk about the new documentary news show, Vice, on HBO. We've all just seen it, the first 2 episodes, in fact. This is a documentary news-type show that takes people from Vice Magazine to different locations around the world. In the first episode, they went to the Philippines and to Afghanistan. In the second episode, North Korea, and then they discussed the India-Pakistan-Kashmir conflict.
I actually like this show. I watched Vice's earlier documentary series that was on MTV a couple years ago. And what's wonderful is they cover many stories that we don't get to see. There's a dearth of many of these stories in mainstream media.
We should also mention that this show, Vice, is created as an extension of Vice Magazine. It's executive produced by Bill Maher and Shane Smith, who is one of the co-founders of Vice. I like that we're seeing things that we haven't seen on the news. Mm-hmm. It's informative, but man, I just felt really sad after watching this show.
I agree with you that this show, Vice, does take us into parts of the world in which we may not be familiar, which we don't get on the evening news. And all of the problems associated with the show Vice emanate from this one big issue, in that the show is disingenuous in representing itself as journalistic news programming, when in fact it is probably the worst form of liberalists' propaganda. I mean, it really is. It's propaganda.
Well, I don't know if I go that far, but
it's totally propaganda.
It's certainly to the left, but it's not propaganda.
It's totally propaganda.
When they used to say in America that they couldn't find Osama bin Laden because he was in caves, we didn't understand what but these are tunnels and whole complexes. Yeah.
I really enjoyed seeing a lot of these stories because at the end of it, I felt imbued with this call to action to do something about what I'm seeing on screen.
Realistically, though, you can't do anything about political assassinations in the Philippines or kids joining the Taliban and being suicide bombers. So really, you're just left with a show that's showing you terrible things and kind of leaves you with a,
you know what? I'll tell you exactly what it leaves you with. It leaves you with, man, we sure are better off than those other people around the globe.
It's hard not to feel that.
Man,
it's true.
Those people are really messed up over there. Man, I'm sure glad we don't have any of those people here where we live. They don't say it, though. Of course they don't say it, and that's what's brilliant about it.
I only got, wow, stuff is really messed up around the entire world. I mean, you know what's going on in the United States right now. It's messed up now. We know how messed up it is. I feel like the audience knows how messed up the United States is. So now for me, I'm like, it's happening all over the world.
That's great, but guess what? You don't get to call it news. You don't get to call it reportage. You don't get to call it journalistic. Because there is no evidence, nothing is empirical. They don't do anything to prove any of these claims that they make. And they make some pretty wild claims, or it's very subtle, which is why you don't feel preached to, right?
Yeah.
But nevertheless.
I did some of the time.
Some of the time?
Or I was just blown away, like, I hope we don't get a grenade thrown in our truck and all.
I hope we
you're right.
We're gonna go in here, this is a really dangerous situation.
I hope we don't get shot.
I hope we don't get kidnapped. Really?
The episode where they meet the Taliban, I loved it because it was really about the disconnect between the religion and the Taliban. It's about how they're using kids for suicide bombing because the adults are not doing it anymore because they realize, oh, this is un-Islamic. And I really love that they're showing that it's about these people, Taliban, and it's not about the religion, which I feel happens all the time in mainstream media.
I didn't know that when they recruit kids to be a part of the Taliban, that these kids have no knowledge of the Quran, so they don't know that committing suicide is forbidden. And that was a really interesting thing for me to find out, because they're manipulating each other to get what they want, and it's not good. It's not nice.
The victims of the Taliban attacks, the parents of people who were targeted, that part to me was the most interesting. And then anytime that they talked to any of the victims, that was the most honest, and that's where the information really came for me.
And all these people, they're not documentarians, they are journalists and writers of articles from Vice Magazine. Shane Smith, one of the co-founders, is one of the people that goes to all these countries, and then they have another correspondent from Vice.
Well, yes, they are hipster reporters, and it's a little bit distracting, but For me, that's not the importance of the show. It's about the questions, the people that they interview, and the information that they get.
Yeah.
Oh, I disagree. They function as your avatar in that space. If I don't find truth in what you do as my representative, then I get a little shut down.
Vice is a very informative show discussing things that we don't often see in the news today, but I don't think that it's must-see TV, so I'm gonna give it a stream it.
Vice is not without some entertainment value, but with all of its sloppy junk journalism, it's like a bad habit and should be dropped. Skip it.
Vice is an interesting doc-series, and mainly for those who watch the 24-hour news cycle and are tired of the stories that they see every day. See it.
All right, so our votes add up to 1.5 tickets, which is a stream it for Vice.
Cheers. Cheers.
I liked it when Vices were gambling and
Alcohol.